Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Coffee and Geography. And were you pleasantly surprised by that kind of break in the normal format last week where I had the on location at the Norwich Science Festival? Yeah, I mean, I just went for it. And so this guest is actually coming to you a week later than planned, but it's definitely worth the wait. A friend of mine, I could say kind of maybe proxy ex-colleague, maybe, you know, we worked across the hall from each other. Zoë Johnson. Hello, Zoë. How are you?
Hello, Kit. I'm good. How are you?
Doing very, very well. So yeah, we're sitting here. The sun is out at the moment because, of course, one thing we do quite a lot, or at least I used to do, you still do, is talk about the weather.
Love to talk about the weather. Anytime, any place, I'm there.
Yeah, and that is because Zoë is a meteorologist and climate change journalist, currently studying a master's in broadcast journalism at the University of East Anglia after doing a stint of 3 years of weather forecasting. We're definitely going to talk about that because that's how I met Zoë. She loves to talk about the weather, but also likes to talk about climate change because if you don't talk about it, how else are you going to inspire change? Zoë loves talking to schools about climate change as part of STEM, and children are so engaged with the subject. This is very true. And she loves the natural world and has been a geography fan since day one. So a perfect guest for this podcast then, Zoë.
I'm glad you think so.
Always. It's always fun talking to you. Right. So speaking of the Norwich Science Festival, you've not long got home. You got home, got yourself settled, popped yourself in front of the laptop, and now here you are. So yeah, how's your day been at the Norwich Science Festival?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Today was Climate Change and Sustainability Day at the Norwich Science Festival, so I had to be there. And in particular, I'm working on a story about how edible insects could be the future of climate change, if that makes sense, or perhaps can eating insects help us fight climate change is a better way of putting it. So I was speaking to people there all about that, about how we should be eating insects. And it was fascinating and maybe, I don't want to say off-putting because I've maybe been converted, but there's still a little bit of squeamishness there.
Right. Okay. Right. So I'm thinking that some people listening have just like shivered a little bit. Hopefully, folks, you haven't gone off the road if you're listening in your car. But okay. So have you eaten insects yourself?
I didn't. They didn't have any there to try, so I dodged a bullet. I think I would be a little bit persuaded to perhaps eat them in the future, because the concept is that they're a much more sustainable source of protein than perhaps meat, even like vegetarian or vegan alternatives. So they might have persuaded me there.
Yeah, and we're not talking about like, for I know not everyone listening is into popular culture, but we're not talking about like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here kind of thing, are we? Right, like you just basically they're giving you a live praying mantis. You got to shove it in your gob or something like that. It's not what we're really talking about, folks. We're talking about going through the whole food processing process, because one thing I've heard of is you can get, in some places, you can actually get flour made out of insects, or grinded insect like cricket and stuff like that, and you can actually use it to bake with. So I have heard of that before. And we were joking, weren't we, just before we started recording, about how the Egyptians missed a trick with the plague of locusts because they could have chowed down.
Yeah, it could have been a tasty treat.
So tell us a little bit about how you were kind of working with the guests, and how are you kind of inspiring the young people? Because you say you love talking to young people about stuff like this. So what were you trying to do to get them to fired up about this topic?
I was just there at the science festival today on a bit of a background mission, so I wasn't directly involved. I was watching the experts at work, in getting involved with the children. But on other occasions, it's definitely something I love to do. But insects, not my what's the phrase? Not my topic, not my topic. So
Oh, I really thought you were going to come up with an insect paste bun, but I can't think of one myself. I'm usually good at thinking of one, but nothing buzzed around your head. No.
No.
I just had to. Right, so you're taking a sip from your mug there. What have you got in your mug?
What
brew have you got?
I've got coffee with frothy oat milk as a real treat, and it's got a bit of vanilla in it as well, because I've gotten into syrup in my coffee, which is probably not a great habit to develop, but I'm into it.
When we were working at the Enterprise Centre, did you ever get any syrup in your coffee from the cafeteria?
I never even bought coffee from there because I try not to buy coffee out unless I've got my little reusable mug with me, and I never had that with me, so I'm just poor organisation, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, they really did try and encourage us to kind of like bring our own mugs or stuff like that, but you could have just grabbed one from the cupboard just above the sink. Anyway.
I'm lazy.
Yeah. So, is there any kind of particular brand that you drink, or do you just pick up any coffee off the shelf?
Yeah, I have, and I've bought the packet as per your request. This is what I have.
Halo.
And yeah, so the company's called Halo. And they make coffee pods that go in your Nespresso machine or your coffee machine, but they're made out of paper, which is really cool. So they can be put in the food bin basically once you're done. And I love that because I like a nice cup of coffee. I like the no fuss way of making it in a machine. It ticks all the boxes.
So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, so you got Halo pods. So we're going to look that one up. So they have got some sustainable credentials, folks. So if you look it up, and when you see it, you type in Halo. You don't obviously click on anything to do with the video game, folks. So it's Halo, and it's got a little line above the O, tilde above the O. So when you find it, yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. So folks, have a look at that up. See how sustainable it is. Right. So let's go now talking about Norwich and stuff, because we always talk about people's locations. I've had so many people on from Norwich, of course, because obviously plenty of my friends and colleagues are from Norwich, and I'm always dragging those in. So I'm trying to think, how can I phrase this in a way that makes it sound different? So is Norwich first of all, tell folks, is Norwich where you were born and bred, or have you moved into Norfolk in the area from somewhere else?
I was actually born in the James Paget Hospital in Great Yarmouth.
Oh, not that far away.
There's a fun fact. I grew up in Suffolk, in a very small village called Spexel, which is near Halesworth, which is near Bungay, to kind of broaden the picture a little bit for you. It's about 20 minutes from the coast, so places like Southwold, I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be familiar with. That's where I grew up pretty much. All my childhood, then came to university in Norwich at the University of East Anglia. Pretty much stayed there ever since, except 1 year where I lived between Exeter and Bristol for a year.
Just a year? What did you go all the way? That's a little distance to go from here. So
yeah, I did a year in industry as part of my degree. So I spent time at the Met Office in Exeter, and then I went to a renewable energy company in Bristol, and then I moved back to Norwich. I was like, I like it here. I'm staying.
Folks. Okay, so if you're not aware who the Met Office are, I mean, the vast majority of you listening will know who the Met Office is, but so the Met Office are a scientific body who, and the Met stands for meteorological, and they do tons of things about weather forecasting, modeling, climate modeling. It's just the scientific research into the impacts and the cause. They're just an amazing bunch of people at the Met Office, and they're very highly regarded. They're very, very prestigious scientific organisation here in the United Kingdom. And their headquarters is in Exeter. So you're a classic quintessential East Anglian gal then.
Definitely.
Yeah, so Yarmouth to stuff. Yeah, because my parents used to live, and this name will ring a bell to you, hardly to anyone. My parents actually had a very short stint in Rumborough.
Yes. Wow.
And now put it this way, folks. So I want you to think of one of the most isolated settlements with the middle of nowhere that doesn't have hardly anything. It only has a pub and a village hall and a phone box, and that's pretty much it. And then you had to drive 10-15 minutes to Halesworth to go to the co-op there to go shopping, And on my parents, like my dad is Cockney from East London, and my parent, I was born and raised in the new town of Harlow in Essex, as I've mentioned many times. And he decided to give the whole country lifestyle a go for a year, and they ended up moving out there very soon and going to Ipswich. So
it is cut off.
yeah, so it's quite a nice area though, and we actually, and my partner and I did actually do a hike from Norwich all the way down to Rumborough. Over to we decided we could have done it in a day, but we took 2 days, and then we stayed at this bed and breakfast at Homersfield. So
lovely stuff.
So yeah, so it's what's the question I want to ask you then, Zoe, is that there's a stereotype about going to university where people go, oh, it's a way for you to get away from the family, like to really go at the other side of the country or whatever, to experience things different, go to a completely different. But you just basically just went a stone's throw away to the UEA. So, what drew you, like, well, what compelled you to stay so close and only come to Norwich and the University of East Anglia? Why did you feel that this is fine for me and I'm still within arm's reach of home? Was it by choice? Did your parents force you to, or was it? Would you miss mum and dad, or what was it?
It was actually the degree itself. So I knew I wanted to study meteorology. There's only a handful of places you can do that in the UK. So I'd have been going to East Anglia or Edinburgh or Reading. And there was a couple other ones that I considered, like Plymouth, that do, I think, an oceanography degree. But if I wanted meteorology, my options were very limited. I nearly went for Edinburgh, but I think their degree title is physics with meteorology. I wasn't much into physics, so that ruled that one out. And I think the Reading one is mathematics and meteorology, so I crossed that one out as well.
Oh.
It left me with meteorology and oceanography in Norwich at the University of East Anglia. And I think I was grateful that I was close to home when I first started uni, because I found it hard to make friends in my first year. I found, eventually did make some friends, but at first it was a bit of a rocky start because I was living in a very big flat full of very different people, bit of a shock to the system. So it was lovely to be able to go home, and then a couple of years later spread my wings and moved down to the southwest. But
because there's this misconception that, like, if you to go to university, you've got to completely break away from home. I mean, if you want to do that, then obviously you should do that. For me, it was about an hour and a half, 2 hours drive back down to Harlow. So it was far enough away where I felt like I was on my own, but close enough where, if I wanted to go home, I could. And I even did this really silly thing that I used to actually drive all the way back home once a week to play football for the football team I used to play for. I was like, silliness, absolute silliness.
I used to take my washing home on that bus.
I was about to ask. Now that is a stereotype.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we'll give a few shout outs now, because that leads into the next thing I want to talk to you about. So we'll give a shout out to Professor Steve Dorling, of course. He will be very, very happy to hear you say that, out of all these places that you could have gone to, you decide to stick it close to home and come to UEA. So Professor Steve Dorling is a friend of ours, colleague of Zoe's, and lecturer of ours, of course, when we did meteorology, our meteorology course at University of East Anglia. And I will never ever forget the Lake District trip.
No,
amazing.
I mean, it was magical. All the trips, actually, that there was a field trip in the first year as well to Slapton, down I think in Devon. Amazing field trip. That's like the School of Environmental Sciences at UEA has great field trips, definitely.
Guys, this is just based on our personal experience, all right? We're not being funded and paid by the UEA. Okay, all right. I know I work for the UEA 3 days a week, but they're not giving me extra money for this. It's just our personal experience. But yeah, Slapton is great. They take the whole of the cohort, the first years, down there. But one of the best things about Slapton, of course, is the beach party. But apparently I've heard that they've had to stop doing the beach parties.
That would be
Somebody's
very
got a look
sad.
of shock on her face. Yeah,
that would be so sad, because it's just lovely memories all sat on the beach around the campfire. I think me and my friends actually bought a bottle of spirits from the local pub from behind the bar to take down to the beach. You can edit that out if I shouldn't have said it, but
well, that's up to you. You can stay anyway.
That's the kind of thing that we did, and it's lovely memories.
Yeah, and so the field trip to the Lake District in the second year, so with Steve's meteorology course, I got two memories from that, which I really are fond of. One is one of my best friends, Dan Beeden, who I'm trying to get on this podcast because he works for the British Antarctic Survey, and he would be an awesome guest, and his wife Julia, who is in flood management. So it's like, come on, folks. You're like, can you listen in? Come on. I know you know me and you can't get me to shut up, but come on my podcast, please. But I remember me and Dan and another of our really good friends, Matt Wicks, getting up at 5 a.m. to go for a pre-day hike, and the sun was rising as we were coming like clambering over these rocks, and we just had the magical sunrise just over the Lake District. That was brilliant. And the other one was that that was actually the last time that I had quite long hair, but this was before when I knew actually how to manage long hair and it actually suit me. This was when I was in my rebellious long hair phase, and the weather, the thing
Mast.
that we were trying to put up, the mast. Thank you. The mast we were trying to put up. So we put a mast up by the lake to try and get the microclimate there, and then the other time we tried to get this mast up in this forest, and it got stuck as we were trying to put it up, and like the guy ropes got stuck. So, and like I think it was Steve or someone who said like, yeah, we need to kind of untangle them. Who's going to shimmy up the tree? And I was like, I will. But of course, these were like coniferous trees. I was like climbing up this, ow, and getting my hair stuck and everything. But yeah,
magic.
So I was
You
the
reminded
Muppet.
me of something. Your first story reminded me of something I did on that field trip, and I haven't probably thought of it since. I set an alarm for 3 o'clock in the morning one of the days on our field trip, got everybody in my little like dorm room up and out of bed because the forecast from the night before had said there was a chance of seeing the Northern Lights. So I was like, we're going, we've got to do this. Got everyone out of bed, everyone was ready. We went outside and it was cloudy.
Oh no.
I'm a weather forecaster and I hadn't checked the weather. I just checked the aurora forecast and we didn't see anything. Everyone went back to bed and laughed at me the next day. But I took it, as a weather forecaster, you get used to getting things wrong.
I love it. You heard it here, folks. So when you see Zoe on your screen one day, maybe doing the weather forecast, you're like, yeah. So she didn't even check the forecast once when she was so excited about the aurora borealis. Right. So segue now, going back to Steve Dorling and the crew. So if I mention these names, we've got Steve Dorling, we've got Chris Bell, we've got Fred Best, we've got the magnificent, legendary Jim Bacon, who is a very famous name here in East Anglia, and this was and other folks, Ian and everybody. Maury, how you doing, folks? From WeatherQuest. So you did 3 years working at WeatherQuest. Tell folks what WeatherQuest was then, and they were based at the UEA.
Yeah, WeatherQuest is a weather forecasting company. I think they started in 2001, and it was started by Jim Bacon, TV legend, and I think Steve Dorling, and they all grouped together to start this company to provide weather forecasts, mainly to sort of starting off with clients in East Anglia, but then spreading worldwide it is now. And they really do a bit of everything. So a lot of what they do is weather forecasts for farmers. Being in this region, East Anglia, we have a lot of farmers here. So a lot of their time is really spent on the phones talking to these people about how the weather could affect them and how to sort of maximise their business by getting the right weather forecast. But another big area they're sort of moving into now is offshore renewables, so offshore wind farms. They're doing incredibly well in that sector. So it's really great to see that because it's brilliant stuff for the climate. But yeah, they really do a bit of everything. And it was a great experience, my 3 years there.
Yeah, and you got to practice, basically what you're now doing. You got to practice doing the whole classic green screen video weather forecasting kind of thing. So yeah, and so we managed to find a room in the Enterprise Centre, paint one of the walls chroma green, and we set up. So, folks, if you've seen some of my green screen videos, my first lot of green screen videos before COVID set in, I was actually using WeatherQuest's studio. They said, as long as you help us set up and take down kit, you can use that. But yeah, so I'll put a link in the description, folks. But there's something that Zoe used to do called the farming forecast, which is effectively an extended forecast that you would see on TV. So give us an example then of the kind of information that would have been so useful to farmers if they were to watch your farming forecast.
Yeah, so they'd get a lot more specific detail in our forecast than they would from maybe a TV broadcast, because that's sort of catered to the wider audience, whereas ours was specifically targeted at farmers. So they'd get things like we had a spraying index. So there was a range of green colours on the map that showed whether the winds were light enough and it was dry enough, so they could go out and spray fertilizers on their crops and things like that. And then we would often talk about things like water deficit, very important at the moment because February's been so dry. So we'd talk about things like that, and we'd go a lot further ahead than TV forecasts as well. So we'd look ahead to sort of the next month and see what the trends were indicating that the weather was going to do, which I think is a little bit more than you can get elsewhere, and that's why it was so successful. But yeah, unfortunately, Fred left shortly before I left, and we were sort of two out of the main three presenters, so it had to stop, which is very sad.
Yeah, the talent had to go. Yeah, well, because the other folks who have done BBC forecasts, obviously other than Jim Bacon, of course, has been Chris Bell. So, folks, if you're in the east of England and you've watched BBC Location, you've got that American guy comes on and does the forecast. That's Chris. And then you've got and then the person they always seem to call up when they want a comment on some kind of weather thing going on, whether it's drought or whatever, is they usually get Dan Holly on. So there's two folks, and hi Chris, hi Dan. Perhaps I should get them on on here as a double act.
Oh,
that'd be quite cool.
That would
get
be
them both
something.
on at the same time. Yeah, okay. Come on, Dan. Come on, Chris. But we're going to end up getting Chris talk about the Astros, no doubt, if we as is any other business. So then you mentioned about renewable energy, which is something I was very, very keen on, and across the hall when I used to work for the World Energy Meteorology Council, we were very, very keen on renewable energy. And because in the office at WeatherQuest, you had this quite large map on the wall with all of the wind installations, and I mean, my God, how much have you looked? Because you've slightly moved away from it now, but how much are you aware of like the most recent plans? I mean, and all of the onboarding that they've having to do and bringing that on, because it's very controversial around here about how they're going to move the energy around. So there's protest signs about people's houses about no more pylons, and they want to. Yeah. So what do you know about that, Zoe, about this boost in renewable energy off the coast here?
I mean, there's so many sort of angles you can come at it from. Obviously, it is very upsetting for people when you think about these, pylons or big underground cables, going past their house, because that's important to people and where they live. So you can definitely see their point of view. But from a climate change perspective, it's amazing that East Anglia is like the hub of offshore wind energy in the UK. It's incredible. It's providing so many financial benefits across the region as well, in places like Lowestoft. So I do think it's incredible. And if you went back to that map that we had on the wall at WeatherQuest, you'd need to get a felt tip and add so many more little boxes, because there's so many more in the pipeline now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just really exciting for our region as well. And so the fact that I remember teaching school kids was that Britain has roughly 40% of Europe's wind resource. So basically, if you were to quantify the amount of wind that comes over the continent of Europe, the UK has almost half of it, which is not really surprising if you think about it, because obviously we're on the western side of the continental shelf, and the prevailing winds are coming from that, from the west and the southwest, and then quite a lot of that resource does actually hit around the coast of the North Sea, because we've got nice shallow seas and we can put in our wind turbines and stuff. But of course now floating turbines are becoming a thing as well.
Yeah, amazing. Well, fantastic technology, like not super, necessary at the moment in the North Sea, because like you said, it's
No.
very shallow, especially in the southern North Sea. But, it's amazing to see what they're going to do with that in the future.
Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. Right, I'm going to test you a little bit here, Zoe, right? I'm putting you on the spot. So there's this fantastic tool, and I'll put a link in the description, folks, because I think especially if you're just interested in this kind of stuff, but if you're an educator, you will love this tool. It's called the Global Wind Atlas, and it was developed by the World Bank Group, ESMAP Vortex, and DTU, which is a Danish university. And so this is wind speed, Zoe, at 10 meters in height, yeah, because tell everybody why do we need to measure wind speeds at different height?
Because the winds change at different levels in the atmosphere. So close to the surface, obviously we've got lots of things on the surface, so it can be quite disrupted. And as you go sort of higher up in the atmosphere, the winds can be stronger, they can be lighter, they can move in different directions. So it's very important that we have a picture of this all the way through.
Yeah, and the one thing I remember from our meteorology course is the Ekman spiral.
Yeah,
because I that's the only thing that really grabbed my attention with the anyway. Look it up, folks. Look it up. Right. Okay. So I'm going to choose. What should I say? I've got 5 options here. I've got wind speeds at 10 meters, 50, 100, 150, or 200 meters. Now you could cheat and just say I'll do it at 200, but then it's going to be constant all over the place. So okay, go on. Choose 100, 50, or 10. Zoe, go on.
It's got to be 10.
10 meters, right? So this is the wind speeds at, not quite, but near ground level. So if you think of, height of a house, perhaps, very tall person standing on top of themselves 5.5, 6 times. Right. Okay. So let's see. This is no reflection on Zoe's knowledge or anybody, folks. It's just like any other geographer. Just because we're geographers doesn't mean we can necessarily name the capital city of every single country in the world, right? It's that kind of thing. Right. So if I'm putting my mouse over the North Sea, Zoe, what do you reckon roughly the average wind speed is over at 10 meters?
Is that today?
This is just average. This is
average.
Just, I'm trying to look at what it would tell me. If I click on the area, it will give me area data, temporal data. So yeah, it's just saying mean wind speed at height 10 meters.
Okay, because if it was today, we've got Storm Otto, which was named by the Danish Met Service, moving to the north of the UK. So I was like, it's going to be windy, but no, it's average. So I want to say, wait, are we going meters per second, miles per
meters
hour?
Per second. Yeah, let's go meters per second. Let's standardize it.
Ooh, 12 meters per second.
Okay, not too bad. So the average wind speeds in the North Sea at 10 meters is about 7.68 meters.
Too high.
Yeah, a bit too high. Yeah, well, okay, about 50% too high, but still. Okay, so but as soon as we hit the coast, so let's go down. You said Southwold, right? I know it's a bit round. It's a bit round to the east, but let's go Southwold. So if I was to put the pin right off the coast of Southwold, what do you reckon it? So not on the coast, just off the coast. So let's say a good 100 meters off the coast of Southwold. What do you think it would be?
6 meters per second.
Oh, almost spot on. Yeah, 6.5 meters per second. Yep. And then, I wonder if I can do this. Can I search for? So was it? We said Rumbra, right? So let's do Rumbra. We mentioned Rumbra. So then, what do you reckon the average wind speed at 10 meters per second is at Rumbra?
5 meters per second.
4.91.
Oh.
So there you go, folks.
It's once you told me the base level, I could get the other two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just extrapolating. Yeah. So there's a good demonstration, folks, about why there's a lot of investment in wind turbines, particularly offshore. And, on one of those big turbines, they're so powerful that, some of them, just one rotation of their blades can power an average home for like 2 days. It's nuts. So, and it's not a surprise that they're really investing a lot in the North Sea. So you do have higher wind speeds. Like off the coast of Scotland and certainly off the coast of West Scotland and Ireland. But of course, then you're getting off towards the edge of the continental shelf, and it's very deep out there, and therefore the logistics to build wind farms out there is much more difficult.
And with it being so much windier all the time, they struggle to actually get out there and build the wind farms. So
interesting
that, the winds and the waves being higher over there actually, makes it very difficult for them to build it. But then here in the southeast, we get more of a lightning risk, so you're sort of weighing out your pros and cons.
Yeah, because there was that there was a lightning strike, wasn't there, on the turbine, and that was put as the proponents of wind energy. It was like, see, we can't rely on wind turbines because they get struck by lightning, they cause a blackout for an entire part of the country, and you're like, no, it was the infrastructure that was crap, and they should have safeguarded, not the wind turbines' fault. Mostly it's okay. Oh, fantastic. Right. We're going to move on now, Zoe, and we're going to have a look at, we're going to jog on now. So jog on is when I give you 5 different topics, and you can choose to jog on with them, which means positive. I would like to carry on and talk about these things. Mm-hmm. Or you can say, Kit, take a hike, which means I'm not interested in talking about that. But you can only say take a hike twice.
Okay.
So imagine that as a get out of jail free card. You only got 2 of them. Right. So here are 5 topics. This is a random topic generator. I haven't told you any of the topics in advance, no?
Nope.
Just to clarify. Okay. So the first topic, and you can talk about, it could be an experience about it. It could be something you love about it, hate about it, or an example, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just roll with it. So the first topic, Zoe, is children's books. Jog on or take a hike?
Take a hike.
Take a hike. Okay. Now this next one is absolutely hilarious, right? I mean, I am not thinking about this yet, and you are certainly probably wouldn't be thinking about this yet because you're younger than me. But the second topic is retirement.
Go on then, jog on.
Okay. Talk to me about retirement. Do you already have plans what you would do when you retire? Or?
I do not have plans for my retirement yet, but it made me think about my parents who have just retired, and they're trying to work out what they want to do with their lives now. And they've had a very interesting retirement so far, geographic-wise, I guess.
They've been travelling a lot.
They have. The first year, they decided they would sell the house we grew up in. They bought a boat, like a yacht, and they went off from Ipswich and sailed down to the Algarve on the south coast of Portugal. So that's what they were doing. I can't remember what year it was now, but about maybe 2 years ago, they were doing that. Just sailing around. I went and joined them in Portugal, lovely place called Lagos, amazing rock formations at the coast, like have a Google of that because it's beautiful. So that's what they did, and then they decided the boat lifestyle wasn't for them. There's a lot of issues surrounding sort of the EU now, and how long you can stay in Europe, which is a real shame for people that love to travel. So they came back, they sold their yacht, and they've just bought a camper van. So they will be now exploring, but by road. They're planning to go up to Scotland, I think.
Nice.
So yeah, that's where I spent a lot of my childhood, in Scotland. Lovely geographical area. And that's what my parents are doing for their retirement.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, fair play to you, Zoe's parents. Fair play to you. Yeah, that's amazing. Right, so moving on to the next topic then is... I don't know what we would classify as strange, but strange movies.
Strange movies. Okay, we'll jog on.
Okay.
What strange movies have I watched recently? Oh, God. Have you watched any while I'm thinking?
Strange movies. Well, I don't know whether this counts, but the kids got me to watch the live action of Aladdin. That was quite strange, in many different ways. I mean, it's like, how Disney are trying to kind of like be culturally representative, but they still had Will Smith as the genie. I like Will Smith, right? Recent events aside, I genuinely like Will Smith, but still, it's like, yeah, and it was just a bit weird, but I enjoyed it. Any other things? I always cite Studio Ghibli movies. They're always strange, but strange in a good way.
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
Studio Ghibli. Like, so yeah, and like some of the strangest ones are like things like Spirited Away. I like that
Oh, me
movie. Is
too.
bonkers, but it's bonkers
Yes.
good.
I just thought of one that I watched over Christmas that was a strange movie, and I'm trying to find out what it was called.
It's okay. We won't tell anybody that Zoe is currently browsing on IMDb to try and figure out what movie it is.
It was something about like a little lost culture in the mountains, and these people had found a way of like farming and relying on this little green sprout that glowed and grew in the ground. And their whole little settlement was surrounded by mountains, and they went on like an adventure to see what was beyond the mountains. And it was like a fantastical world beyond the mountains. And there's I'm not going to spoil it in case anyone does watch it, even though I can't remember what it's called, but there's like there's a very strange moment at the end when you're like, what? It's a bit of a geography themed movie. I wish I could remember what it was called.
Okay, folks, if you know what that is, you can please tag both me and Zoe on Twitter and say, hey, this was the movie. Zoe will give her Twitter handle at the end of the episode.
Yes, please. I would love you to put me out of my misery and tell me what that was.
This is what the listenership's for. Right, okay, so you've got 2 left. If you skip the next one, you have to talk about the last one. If you talk about the last one, the next one, you can't talk about the final one. Right,
Ooh.
So I don't know. The next one is Love at First Sight.
Go on then. We'll talk about
Jog
that.
on. Oh, okay.
Go
Interesting.
on. Love at first sight. What an interesting concept. I'm sure it does exist. I'm a helpless romantic, so I love to think about things like that. But I don't think, and I really hope my fiance isn't listening, I don't think it was love at first sight. I think we were destined to be together because we are really well matched, but I don't think it was love at first sight.
Yeah. Oh, bless him.
Yeah, we met at school. We're childhood sweethearts, as you would call it.
That's right.
Yeah, so we met at school, sat in geography class together. We're told off for talking for too much. And yeah, 10 years later, we're still together. So yeah, maybe not love at first sight, but yeah.
Oh, he's going to have to listen to this now and feel all gooey. Yeah.
I'm sure you'd say
lovely.
the same.
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain. Yeah, and you're right. You two are pretty much well matched. But yeah, I mean, love at first sight. Yeah, it's the same with me and my wife. Like, it wasn't love at first sight. I thought she was really cute. I was like, oh, this, I'm definitely quite gay for this person. But it wasn't like, yeah, love at first sight. She grew on me, and I definitely grew on her. So, but yeah, we've still been together like 20 years. So,
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Right. Well, the last topic, which I probably would have been interesting to talk about, and we've kind of we've kind of sort of talked about it already. It was emerging technology. That was the last topic. So we could have, we've already talked about, new wind turbines and stuff like that, and so eating insects. So I think we've covered. Right. Okay, so the last thing we'll move on to before we finish off with We're All Geographers is You're Spilling the Beans. So now, it was a really tricky question. When someone is so dedicated towards geography and the environment like we are, it is really hard to think of a topic where you can't relate to geography. So, and you said that, because so many of your hobbies are very close. Okay, well, first we'll start with that. So, apart from the obvious, because I know you like to travel, you like the weather and stuff like that, but yeah, what other hobbies do you have which are like, yep, you are such a geography geek?
I just love being outdoors. I love running, so I do a lot of running. I like to run in sort of nice locations. I'm generally, for many things, quite a big nerd. I love geography, really, finding out about stuff. So it's a lot of time spent outdoors. Another hobby, and I think you'd probably say this could be geography linked. I love to cook. And I thought the link to geography was too obvious because, you've got different cuisines for different cultures around the world. So yeah, they're sort of my main things. But I was trying to think of something that was super random for you to answer this question.
Yeah, well, this is what we're going to come up to next. And of course, there's geographical links with this, obviously. But this is the furthest removed you thought of, and that was you really, really, really like musical theatre. So musical theatre, yeah, that's a good stuff.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I'm a sucker for it. I love musicals all the time. I'm not a great singer, not a great dancer, but I'm always singing.
You're a good cheerleader, though.
And I do have like the dreams that one day I will star in a musical. As unlikely as it sounds, you never know, it might happen. Apparently you can learn to sing, so
Yep. What would you say are if you could have a top 3 of musicals that you've seen or watched or whatever, what might be in your top 3?
So this is going to sound really weird, and it's another example of my very sort of love of nerdy things. There's an online theatre group from the US called Star Kid, and back in, I want to say it's like late noughties or early teens, they created a Harry Potter spoof musical, and from then on they I think that went viral, and then they started creating their own musicals, and they're normally sort of spoof musicals. So there's like a spoof of Aladdin that's called Twisted. It's all told from like Jafar's point of view. That's one of my favorite musicals. They put them all online for free, which is just what I love about them. So Twisted is brilliant, one of my absolute favorite musicals. They do one called Starship, which is a parody of The Little Mermaid, but it's set in space.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So I love them, but I also love like classic Broadway musicals. I watched Hamilton for the first time recently. Not on Broadway, not on the West End, but on Disney Plus. Not an ad. But I watched that for the first time and I loved that. But if I had to pick, I love Mamma Mia as well. There's just too many. I'm a big musicals fan.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was so fortunate to go and see Hamilton in San Francisco, at a theatre in San Francisco.
Wow.
So see it live, and that was the very last thing I did before the first lockdown, because I came back to the UK on the 10th of March, and then we went into lockdown. But the Hamilton live was just so epic. I
bet.
And I couldn't. Yeah, that's definitely one of the best things ever. I've seen Wicked. I really like Wicked. I love, like you were saying about like seeing Aladdin from a Jafar's point of view. Is like, I really do like alternative stories. Like, well, actually, what's the story behind the Wicked Witch? From about Elphaba's point of view. And so that was really, really good. I'll tell you what, one of my favorite. This is really cool, and this was at the Norwich Theatre one Theatre Royale once, and that's Avenue Q. Have you heard of Avenue Q?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
If it ever does the rounds again, you should so see it. I want you to think it's like the Muppets, but it's adult humor.
That sounds really special and wonderful.
Yeah, it is hilarious. Now it was, I think it was rated 12 and over, so you could have teenage. So it wasn't so dirty and so crass that that it was like 18 or above, but it definitely, there are a lot of adult orientated jokes in there, and I can't, there are some titles. Well, okay, folks. So there is a play on The Countryside is Really Great for Corn, but it is called The Internet is Really, Really Great. And I'll let you fill in the blank. But it is very funny. It's very clever. And it's just like the Muppets. So it's just the actors walking around with puppets on their fingers, and they look exactly like they would in the Muppets and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really good. And the that was at Norwich Theatre Royal. So yeah, go check that out if it does come along. Avenue Q.
I will be there.
Right. Okay, let's finish off then, Zoe. So we are all geographers, and that's where we link all of our guests together. And not last week, because I did that special Norwich Science Festival episode, but the week before last, I talked to Colleen Campbell, who is a PhD student who is doing stuff about coral reefs and in the Red Sea and researching all that kind of stuff. And the words that she's come up for you to talk about for 30 seconds, so it is actually coral reefs. She said, well, this is what I'm studying. I want the next person to talk for 30 seconds about coral reefs. So that's it. So that's your topic, Zoe. So do you think you can talk about coral reefs? And you could say any slant on it whatsoever. You can relate it to meteorology if you like. You can just talk about if you visited a coral reef, don't matter. So do you think you can wax lyrical about coral reefs for 30 seconds?
Absolutely. Do you want me to go now?
You can start whenever you do, and I'll put my timer on the screen so you can see when your time's up. Not 30. You're not going to talk for 30 minutes. You'll talk for 30 seconds. That was a close one. Right. So whenever you're ready, Zoe, and I'll start the time. You just, off you go.
Coral reefs are an incredible source of biodiversity, but they're also massively at risk from climate change. So as our oceans warm, they become more acidic as well, and this is very damaging for the coral reefs. It's something that we really need to work on to sort of help fix the coral reefs. I think there's a lot of really great projects out there that are trying to make them better, so that's really great. Aren't coral reefs just the most fantastic things and beautiful things you've ever seen?
He's like, I need to fill these 30 seconds. I need to fill these 30 seconds. Yeah, brilliant.
I thought I knew more than I did about that topic. When it actually comes to talking about the exact science of what's happening, a lot of it left my brain.
Yeah. It's funny. It's interesting, and I've decided that I used to not put the timer, so folks like Zoe and I can see each other over the camera. And so what you don't know, folks, is that I usually hold up a timer in front of the screen so they can see how long of the 30 seconds they've got left. And it's amazing, like they go, yeah, I'm up for this, really good. And then Kit like shoves a timer in their face and like, you know, so if you hear panic, it's my fault. It's not their fault. Right. But for our next guest, Zoe, you get to come up with something for our next guest to do for 30 seconds. What do you reckon you're going to go for?
Lovely. Geography related?
Can be, or it could be something so far removed if you think, but they've got to link it. So
let's go with what interests me. I'm trying to think. What should we have? Can we have clouds?
Yeah, we can have clouds. We certainly can have clouds. Yep.
Lovely.
Yeah, you sure you don't want to make it like alto-cumulus instead, or
I don't want to make it really, really hard for someone.
Yeah, that's it. Me and Zoe can run off all the cloud types now. Mammatus, lenticular. Right, but no. So we're going for clouds, and so our next guest can have a go at clouds. Right. So we've already given a shout out to the wonderful folks, past and present, at WeatherQuest at the UEA in Norwich. Is there anyone else you'd like to give it? And your parents, of course, and your fiance. Is there anybody else you'd like to give a shout out to?
I would love to shout out the fantastic gang at the MA Broadcast Journalism at UEA. They're my current colleagues, classmates, and they are the most fantastic bunch of people that I've met in a very long time. The broadcast journalism degree is so difficult, I could not get through it without them. So massive shout out to those guys.
Yeah. And I can imagine as someone, you know, just doing a podcast as a hobby, I'm like, yeah, this is easy. You just record, you send it. It's like, no, it is pretty hard work, but it's definitely a labor of love, that's for sure. So then to add visuals and everything like that on it, and like I have done videos and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, no wonder why you have a whole entire production team behind you and everything. So that's a great shout out. And if folks are interested in connected with you, so you have a Twitter account, so what is your Twitter handle if people want to connect with you?
Yep, it's dots above the E, and I think sometimes a lot of people read it as dots above the, because that's kind of what it looks like. But that is my Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the social media. You can find me and follow me on there.
Yeah, I always used to think it was dots above the, and I was thinking that's quite nice. I mean, I realised that now it's because you have your dots above your E on your name, and I really do go to pains to make sure I got that. Like, whenever we correspond,
I'm very grateful for it, because when people do it, and I'd say about 50% of people do, it's so lovely when people put the dots on, because they've really gone that extra step to be caring.
You're worth it, Zoe. You're worth it. So it's dots above the E, but also I love that it can switch to dots above the, because then I think of like stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Zoe, you've been an absolute star. I know it's been lovely catching up with you. Thank you so much for giving up your afternoon and for, coming straight after the Norwich Science Festival and parking your bum and having a little chat to catch up. So thank you so much.
It's been lovely. Thank you for having me, Kit.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.